Not too long ago, the world got to witness the Teach Me How to Gundy dance. Now, Oklahoma State's new defensive coordinator is bringing a completely different tune to town from recruiting and the transfer portal perspective, which has us all ready for this open Grantham style.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things cowboy and cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we are partially brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, and it's not too late to get in on the regular season action still yet with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a winner. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of Oklahoma State's new defense coordinator, Todd Grantham, bringing some players to Oklahoma State via the transfer portal that we've never really had the opportunity to get before. The NFL and SEC pedigree that he's bringing alongside the staff clearly has its footprint already in the transfer portal landscape. You land the number one JUCO transfer in the country at linebacker, the number 3 JUCO transfer in the country at defensive end, and now it just continues to get better. Todd Grantham is already an elite recruiter. Todd Grantham is already possibly one of the best recruiters in Oklahoma State history. And I know that's kind of wild to think, but traditionally, we don't really go after Tennessee players and LSU players. It's just not typically been our bread and butter. But here we are. And not only do we have some of these heavy hitters that we're about to discuss, but we've also got some guys that were sought after from several SEC schools that we were able to get as well. A lot of these connections do date back to their time together, Mississippi State, Florida, so on and so forth. But Oklahoma State, when you look outside of Benny Tonga, the recruiting has been very hit and miss. And we're clearly comfortable with getting guys that we know fit the culture and fit the system, as opposed to always going after the quote-unquote most talented. That is not the case with Todd Grantham. It's a new day and age in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and it's something that we have to get excited about. Whenever Todd Grantham is bringing forth a new age of Cowboy football defense, I think it's wholeheartedly believable. Not only the fact that he's all over social media to keep everybody informed, which is obviously something our previous staffs didn't really do a lot of, but he brings in Malik Charles for starters. 6'5", 255-pound defensive end, 33 tackles, 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups. He also excelled in basketball and volleyball in high school, coming up in northern Arizona, which is why his recruiting was a little bit all over the place. But he goes from northern Arizona to West Georgia, and then obviously decides to come to Oklahoma State after the successful season. He chose Oklahoma State in the transfer portal rounds over Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Nebraska, Arizona State, and Mississippi State. We're bringing in heavy hitters sought after by heavy hitters. Another one of those is going to be Bryan McCoy. Yes, he's coming from Akron. At 6 foot, 225 pounds, he is literally, and with the same speed as well, he's like a carbon copy of a Nick Martin. He had 120 tackles last season. He had a handful of tackles for loss. He had more than enough pass breakups to earn himself a second-team all-conference. He also was projected as a late 5th round to 7th round draft pick right now coming out of Akron, which is why a lot of people assume that he wouldn't, exercise this last year of eligibility when he had this draft grade that was high enough to get it done. He decided to obviously risk it and come to Oklahoma State. He has 10 games with over double-digit tackles, and his progression at Akron is what makes the most amount of sense. He went from 23 tackles to the next year 94 tackles to this last year having 120 tackles. He's high school teammates with Trent Hallen at Juliet West High School in Illinois. Additionally, he was a standout in wrestling, and he wrestled for 3 state finals. And that is obviously something that Mike Gundy is always looking for when it comes to the fundamental side of tackling, is wrestlers typically understand leverage and how to utilize getting low more than everybody else. And Bryan McCoy, instead of getting drafted, chose Oklahoma State over places like Kansas, Memphis. Obviously, Indiana, Illinois are going to be heating up, but he shut it down after his visit. He made one visit with his family, and it was a done deal. So thankfully, we're able to now see another iteration of Nick Martin at linebacker. Then you got to go back to the defensive line. Kyron Duhan, 6'2", 250-pound defensive end from UTEP. Played in all 12 games as a true freshman, but he really only started 5, and his progression didn't come until the end of the season. He had 43 tackles, 7 sacks, and this was mostly the last few games of the year. He did rack up 77 tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and a couple fumble recoveries in high school where he was a standout at track and field. He threw the shot put 50 feet, 11 inches, and he was a 6A state runner-up, silver medalist, and won regionals with a discus throw of 193 feet and 8 inches. He chose UTEP over Washington State and Marshall. This go-around, out of the transfer portal, he picked Oklahoma State over Oregon State, Boise State, and Virginia. Then you got to jump back a litlittle bit to the linebacker. We lost Lyric Rawls, the safety that they wanted to play linebacker, and we picked up Brandon Rawls, no relation, 6'2", 240-pound linebacker out of Saginaw State. He had 153 tackles, 24.5 tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks. And again, this was an individual that really excelled at the end of the year. He was able to do all this, and now he chooses to come to Oklahoma State over Mississippi State and Arkansas. When we talked about the film review of him to some degree, it was a contain situation. Nobody could get outside of Brennan Rawls, and that's going to be beautiful for us because that was our biggest limitation this previous season, is losing contain and the inability to get to the quarterback whenever we had, Colin Oliver and Nick Martin go down. He's a guy that can get east to west. He can cover the flats. He can get up the seams, and he's not going to allow the quarterback or anybody else to break contain. If you're a wide receiver, a running back or a tight end coming out of the backfield or trying to leak on a little bit of 5-yard out route, Brandon Rawls is going to track you down before you ever get to your point of destination. That is a phenomenal get that's going to fill a big hole for Oklahoma State. We got to move on even further back to the cornerback position to Jacalyn, a.k.a. J.K. Johnson. The 6'1", 195-pound cornerback in 2020, coming out of high school, was projected as a second-round pick. He was the number 54 player in America, the number 4 cornerback in the country, and he went to Ohio State. He played and started as a redshirt freshman. He was recruited coming out of high school by Michigan, Bama, OU, Oregon, Clemson, Florida. That's the Todd Grantham connection. Georgia, Notre Dame, A&M, Mizzou, and Ohio State. Obviously chose to go to Ohio State. Then he transferred to LSU, goes to LSU, breaks his arm. Then they try to move him to safety due to his physicality. And whenever you see some of the write-ups about him coming out of high school, one of the reasons he was projected as a possible second-round draft pick was because of the physicality. At 6'1", 180 pounds, he could do some things from a physical perspective that most cornerbacks could not do, which is why he was so highly rated. It hasn't gone exactly up to par for him, right? Being essentially a top 50, top 60 player in the country. It hasn't gone swimmingly, but this is going to be his opportunity to kind of showcase all of the talent that everybody's seen for years, but he's had some things kind of jump and get in his way, and then they tried to position move him, and he just wants to continue playing corner. Can't blame him. We got another individual fairly comparable to that, and Mordecai McDaniel, 6'1", 205-pound DB. He was a 4-star coming out of high school. He was recruited by Tennessee and Florida, right? There's that Grantham connection again. Penn State, Notre Dame, Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Nebraska, and LSU. He later went on to Charlotte, and, he was a track guy. He has a sub 1,100 meter time. He won a gold medal in a local event in the 300 meter. He had 43 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, sack, quarterback hurry, all mixed into this previous season. And I have to give credit where credit's due. I read something from Robert Allen in Polk's report, and his synopsis at the end was he's got the speed to play corner, the size to play safety, and the ability to help as a nickel guy. I think that is absolutely dead on by Robert Allen. He could play corner, he could play safety, but he also has the ability to fill in and play that additional role as well. Then you got to keep shifting gears here again. This is not a transfer, but I think this accentuates the ability of Todd Grantham and this staff in recruiting, not just the transfer portal, because we just picked up Jatavian Pierce. He's a high school kid, 6'2", 185 pounds, from Montgomery, Alabama. He chose Oklahoma State over Auburn, Tulane, Florida, Kentucky, UCF, Ole Miss, Penn State, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Helped his high school to an undefeated 14-0 season where he had 76 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 8 interceptions, a forced fumble, and a forced fumble recovery as well. And he also, on top of that, had almost 200 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. Athletically, he fits the bill. The fact that we're getting some of these guys in the transfer portal is a little bit different than from high school, which is why I wanted to accentuate Jatavian Pierce here as well. Todd Grantham in this NFL/SEC model is clearly bringing guys to Oklahoma State that I don't even know that we ever went after before. We didn't make a habit of going after guys from LSU and Tennessee and Florida previously, but thanks to Todd Grantham, his SEC and NFL connections are allowing these guys to understand that coming to Stillwater, Oklahoma and being part of the rebuild can put them in a very good position moving forward. This is going to be a great time for Oklahoma State football. I don't know, other than Jim Knowles, how often we've got excited about the defensive side of the ball. This has been a breath of fresh air that we all needed to get excited coming into the holiday season and the off season. At least the holidays can be a little bit better right now. Make sure that you have everything squared away and you don't have a bunch of things kind of hanging out in limbo. Paying for apps and things of that nature, they can get caught in limbo quite often, especially if you're like me, aka a dude that is also forgetful. Rocket Money is something that everybody should probably take a peek at, because more often than not, you don't realize some of the things that you used to pay for that are automatically continuing to pull out of your bank account. Rocket Money is going to help you find subscriptions that you forgot about or that you didn't even realize you were still paying for. It happens all the time. It's definitely happened to me. You've got a few subscriptions that you don't even realize you were still paying for from years ago or months ago. And Rocket Money is going to make it easy to track all of them down. It's like having a personal assistant with you 24/7 to help you with your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members an average of $740 a year when using the app's premium features. This is one of the best things that you can get your hands on. The subscription tracker is going to allow you not to have money going out that you didn't even realize anymore. You're going to be able to save a ton. And with the goals feature, you're going to be able to automatically set money aside for future events without stressing and worrying about the budget as much. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions today and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go there today to make sure that you don't have some things hanging out in limbo anymore. All right, now we get to shift gears again to the tight end heavy class that this has become. We just talked about breaths is not a word, but breaths of fresh air. Most Oklahoma State fans have been hooting and hollering and howling at the moon ever since we had guys like Blake Jarwin. And if you want to go back even before that to somebody like a Brandon Pettigrew, if you want to go back even before that to even somebody like an Alonzo Mays, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you've grown up watching the tight ends be pretty utilized in our offense. You could argue at one point in time the tight end usage was one of the focal points of the offense. When Brandon Pettigrew was here, he was not the 4th or 5th option in the route tree. He was usually the 2nd or 3rd option in the route tree because he was just that good. Blake Jarwin could have been 2nd or 3rd in the route tree, but we had so many wide receivers. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then we saw what he did in the NFL until he had a bunch of injuries. And then, of course, everybody is going to realize the gentleman that we do not speak of that ended up going to Virginia and is now absolutely killing it still to this day in the NFL. He converted from quarterback. Yeah, you remember him. Just look it up. Anywho, we've lost out on so many of these tight ends. And then recently we had Josiah Johnson, who was underutilized. He was not put in the right places to be successful within our offense. I think the same can be said with Tyler Foster. Now we have the freshman in Josh Ford that has made a name for himself very early on. So he's going to be one of the building blocks for this position. But on top of that, you also have a lot of guys that we're bringing in. And from a numerical perspective, it is clearly the emphasis. But we still don't need to forget that we also have Taybor Shetron on the roster. Yes, he is the brother of Talon Shetron, 6'4", 230-pound, out of Edmond, Santa Fe. He picked Oklahoma State over K-State, Air Force, and Utah State. That's going to be important here in a minute. But nonetheless, athletically, he has all the capabilities in the world. From a cerebral side, I think the makeup is there of understanding the offensive system. Obviously, blocking and things of that nature are things he's still working on. But now he's going to have a plethora of guys to learn from in this room. We most recently picked up Oscar Hammond out of North Texas. He is an Okie from Collinsville, Oklahoma, 6'3", 240 pounds. He went originally from Collinsville High School to University of Central Oklahoma, UCO in Edmond, where he caught 58 passes for 790 yards and 5 touchdowns. Obviously, when you do that and you put up those kind of numbers, you're going to get better offers. Then he goes to North Texas. In North Texas, he catches 19 passes for 238 yards and a touchdown, which is 12.5 yards per completion, which is clearly what got him in the position to now be an Oklahoma State Cowboy. This round, coming out of the transfer portal, he had offers already from Arizona, UCLA, and obviously Oklahoma State was able to swoop in there before it got too crazy and bring him back home. Obviously, coming back home and playing from his family is a pretty big deal, and I'm sure they feel some type of way. He should have never got out of the state of Oklahoma because he did catch 1,100 yards in high school, so it's not like he was chopped liver that just blocked dudes coming out of high school. So perhaps we missed on him coming out. This is our opportunity to make it right as he heads to Stillwater. Then you've got Jordan Owens. Jordan Owens is often forgot about because he was a very early transfer commitment. 6'6", 250-pound tight end from Central Arkansas. He is a very violent blocker, but he also has the ability to get out and make some things happen. I would say somewhat comparable to a Quentin Stewart with a little bit more athleticism and obviously a lot more size. He caught 19 balls for 166 yards and 3 touchdowns. Recently chose Oklahoma State over Memphis and South Dakota or San Diego State University. Then we have some of this Utah State style connection kind of kick back in here. You have Will Money, 6'4", 230-pound tight end from Utah State. He spent 2 years at Utah State with our new tight ends coach, DJ Tialavea, who has a 4-year-old son that's the size of an 8-year-old son. So hopefully he's going to be a future Cowboy someday. But bringing in Will Money, who comes in off of 2 successful stints at Utah State, and he's another individual that athletically perhaps didn't get used enough because they had 4 returning tight ends. So Utah State, because of Coach DJ Tialavea, brought all 4 of their tight ends back without having any of them transfer, and they all had successful seasons this previous year. Now he brings one of his main guys over with him, and Will Money. This is going to be an exciting time for Cowboy football because we've been yearning for the tight end play to be enhanced again. We needed it. We wanted it. It looks like we might be getting it. We just mentioned Taybor Shetron. Then we also have Jordan Viborny, 6'5", 230-pound tight end out of Corner Canyon, Draper, Utah. And he chose Oklahoma State over Arizona, BYU, Arizona State, Arkansas, Cal, Iowa State, and KU. He was recruited heavily and offered by Michigan State, Texas A&M, and Wisconsin before he tore his ACL. And even then, there's a lot of schools that stayed committed to Jordan Viborny because of the capabilities and the athletic acumen that he brings to the field. So Texas A&M, Wisconsin, maybe you bowed out a little bit too early, primarily because of an injury. But that is the reason why you should be excited, why I am excited, while the country needs to kind of take notice. You don't bring in 4 or 5 tight ends if you don't plan on them being a heavy part of the offense. And for all of us in Cowboy country, that is a heavenly thing that we've been awaiting for quite some time. This is that opportunity. And clearly, there's an emphasis here. We have talent wide receiver. But what we're trying to build at tight end with Josh Ford, with Taybor Shetron, is now going to be maximized with this group that we're bringing in. This group will be able to push each other to obviously push the competition to a completely new level, which is going to do nothing but make Josh Ford even better, which should do nothing but make even Tabor Shetron better. Not to mention, you've got somebody like Io Shotomite King, who is a wide receiver, but he just so happens to be 6'5", 230 pounds. This is a good position for Oklahoma State to be in, and it's even better for us to see that there's a direction here. And we're not just bringing in a couple tight ends to kind of help out with depth. We're clearly targeting tight ends to compete with each other, to be mainstays in the offense, to be integral parts of moving the ball down the field. If your tight end isn't your security blanket, then you're maybe missing out on something, because then your security blanket has to be your running back. And if your running back is always flaring, you're going to give some advantages away to the defense. Utilization of a tight end in the middle of the field as a security blanket for a quarterback, especially a mobile quarterback, is absolutely massive. We watched teams in the Big 12 and outside the Big 12 throw to their tight ends and just beat us up and down the field with tight end play. And we've had some good tight ends that we just didn't necessarily utilize. This is a clear indication, in my opinion, that Doug Meacham plans on putting the tight end as a focal point in the offense moving forward. It's not going to be a fifth or sixth option anymore like it has been for the last 7-8 years. This is the breath of fresh air that we've all been waiting on from this one particular position. Gotta love the onus being put on this position in this room right now. And I think the fact that we have a new tight ends coach that has some familiarity, that caught touchdown passes for Matt Ryan with the Atlanta Falcons, is going to be able to turn these guys into a completely different animal, because Coach McIndoe, like him, love him, or hate him, he's an offensive lineman who coached offensive line for over a dozen years. And then we asked him to magically start teaching people how to play tight end. I don't understand how we thought that was ever going to be the secret to success. Doesn't matter. Here we are now. We've got all these tight ends. It's a great time to be a Cowboy fan, and it's a great time to be a tight end in this offense, I'd imagine. It's also a great time for you to capitalize on your monetary capabilities. The Hammer and the Over Club took a beating this year. Yes, we did. But I think Arizona State's going to give us the opportunity to correct that, to right some wrongs. And if not, you just watched Chuba Hubbard do the daggone thing once again in the NFL. The playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to still get in on the NFL regular season action with America's #1 sports book, which is FanDuel. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 back in bonus bets if your first $5 hauler is a winner. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up the W. I personally love betting on which players are going to score touchdowns and how many points. If I'm watching Jaylen Warren or Chuba Hubbard or Tyreek Hill, of course, I'm going to get involved and I'm going to have fun in the action. You need to pay attention to what Chuba Hubbard is doing. Maybe the Panthers aren't so great, but maybe that's why it makes them a good bet and a good potential way for you to capitalize and make up for some of the Hammer the Over Cowboy losses this year. To do so, make sure you visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com. Go there today for your chance at 250 bones back in bonus bets if your first $5 hauler is a winner. Make sure that you make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to shift gears once again before we skedaddle on off of here. Congratulations, Jacie Hoyt. Had her baby. Then she got back out on the court to get a W. This is another impressive win against a pretty solid Iowa State squad. That number 55 down low, that girl is really, really good. Crooks. She's a problem, okay? And anytime we had, taken Jamison or Praise Agareba off the court, they just kept feeding her down low. And that third quarter got really dicey just because of that. We got in a little bit of foul trouble, and we got in some undersized matchups. But we found a way to make it happen. Onagret Asi was out for a game, and it was a game where the first half was so ugly and sloppy. It was fun to see Onagret back out there and just the difference that she makes in the flooring for everybody, the flooring space. Everybody has more opportunities when she's out on the floor. And from a defensive point of view, you can't give her, I know English is hard for me, hold on, you cannot give her a sliver of room or she's likely going to make the shot. The Estonian assassin was out there doing it again. But, of course, she wasn't the only one. Staley Hurd had another big day. Macy Heward had some big moments. Micah Gray hit some massive shots. Defensively, we did a lot. The Cowgirls were receiving votes right outside the top 25, so 29th, 30th range. With this W, it's possible we creep into the top 25. If we win the next one, it should all but be a done deal that the Cowgirls are back in the top 25 for the first time in a few years. And then the Cowboys got it done as well. It wasn't always pretty, right? But we had several guys in double figures. Bryce Thompson, fresh off of being 1,000-point provider for Oklahoma State. So he's got 1,000 points as a Cowboy, discarding everything that he did or didn't do at KU. And then we get the W to kind of close out the regular season. And everybody knows Oral Roberts is a pesky team. And we also know that Mike Boynton didn't have too many issues with Oral Roberts. So it was going to be a bad look if Steve Lutz began his Cowboy career with an ORU loss. But thankfully, it didn't happen. We took care of business by double digits. And there was moments where it, again, got a little dicey. But overall, pretty good product, pretty good feeling on how the season is going. Now, there are still some people that are saying that it's not much different than the Mike Boynton teams. And all you have to do is go watch free throws. And the rest of it is a complete moot point. We could not shoot free throws at any point in time under Mike Boynton. Don't know why, okay? And I don't know how you coach that to make that a massive improvement, but we've got dudes going 9 for 9 at the line like Khalil Brantley. And then you've got guys like Bryce Thompson that can pop and pick and shoot from almost anywhere. You've got a couple guys that can bang down low. Offensively, yes, we're about as talented as under the Boynton era, but we actually run plays, which we did not do much under the Boynton era. Most of Mike Boynton's offense was isolation. Get one-on-one matchups with your best players, spread the floor, and let them go one-on-one. It worked with Cade Cunningham because Cade Cunningham was the best player in basketball. So he could drive the lane and take on 3 dudes and still find a way to score. That worked because we had Cade, but the rest of the time it didn't work. This team has offensive sets. They run picks. They run plays. They communicate. They do things offensively that we're not used to. They run half-court sets. Of course, they do want to get in a track meet and get up and down the court quite often, but when they're forced to slow down and run sets, it's actually a semblance of an offense. And we get open shots. We just don't have an overabundance of shooters, so we do miss a decent number of those open shots still. But the defense is different than Mike Boynton. The free throw shooting is light years different than Mike Boynton. The hustle, the tenacity, the give a hoot, all of that is significantly different. The only thing that is comparable to the Mike Boynton years is the offensive ability. We have a couple guys who can shoot, but we don't have, dead eye can shoot from anywhere and make it 24/7 guys. We don't have those yet. We can get them if our recruiting continues to tick up, and this is going to be an interesting season for Steve Lutz because nobody really knows how he can recruit. He seems to do pretty decent in the transfer portal. We'll see how the recruiting acumen is. If he can land somebody like a Jalen Montanati, then we're in it to win it because the defense is going to just continually get better. The effort, the hustle, the attitude, those things are non-negotiable. If you're not doing those, you're not going to play anyway. So it doesn't matter how good you shoot. We've just got to find a couple shooters in recruiting to go alongside this wild, wacky, crazy defense that is disciplined and tough and structured and can shoot free throws. That's all we're missing. But the toughness is going to keep us in a lot of games, which is going to make it a lot of fun to watch this team this season, even in the games that we ain't going to win. We've got Houston coming up, and we're going to team up likely with Parker Ainsworth from Locked On the Cougars to talk about the Houston matchup. Until then, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. Of course, you could be anywhere, So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there, you know what to do. Hit the stars, leave a review. Later, my taters.